Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1203 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, Jenny and I are back with another episode of Ask Scott and Jenny, and if you'd like to hire Jenny, you can at integrateddiabetes.com. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, please do me a favor and go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. That's all I need you to do. It'll take about 10 minutes and your efforts will support type 1 diabetes research. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. drinkag1.com/juicebox. And don't forget the 40% off offer at CozyEarth.com is going to go away soon. It's going to go down. So CozyEarth.com, use the offer code JUICEBOX right now to save 40% off of your entire order. But in June of 2024, I don't know what that offer is going to be. Get yours now. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. Eversense is going to let you break away from some of the CGM norms you may be accustomed to. No more weekly or bi-weekly hassles of sensor changes. Never again will you be able to accidentally bump your sensor off. You won't have to carry around CGM supplies. And worrying about your adhesive lasting? Well, that's a thing of the past. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is where my daughter gets her diabetes supplies from. And you could too. Use the link or number to get your free benefit check and get started today with US Med. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Jenny, we're back doing another Ask Scott and Jenny episode. And I've been on vacation for like 10 days. So I just joked with you, let's see if I can remember diabetes.
Yay.
The truth is, even though I haven't been recording for, over a week, I was actually with Arden. So a lot of like hands-on diabetes stuff happened this week, actually. I think I have kind of a theme question I'm going to start with because I don't know how much of this it's going to take up. It's a bit deep for a Monday morning, but how do I support someone who is recently diagnosed but in denial of their new life responsibilities? How do you help someone you love who isn't ready to accept help but is hurting themselves without realizing it? Let's just jump right in on that one.
Gosh, that is deep. Like this is a Monday. Come on. No, that's a really hard one because I think it also depends. It sounds like they're talking about somebody who is an adult that they're trying to support. So it doesn't sound child because that's a little bit different. Obviously, you're the main supporter and you essentially tell your kid what to do. Adults, I mean, you can support as much as you can, but also being the dictator isn't going to help. Obviously, being the one that says, you have to do it this way. And did you take your I mean, all the reminder statements that you probably would love to say, they're only going to make them sort of retreat farther.
Yeah.
So acceptance comes with the person's own ability to find what really matters in life to them, I think is a big piece. You really like going golfing for 4 hours Saturday morning. Well, this happened and this happened. It would probably be a little bit better if you did some of the things that you know to do at this point. Mm-hmm. But even those statements are more of a blame, right? That sounds like well, you caused it. And that's not really what you're trying to get across. You're trying to show if you took some of these steps, you could do many of the things that you really want to be doing, and this could be less of a burden. But it's hard to get somebody to reflect that way when they truly just hate what's going on.
So while you've been talking, I'm sitting with my whiteboard in front of me, writing down the names of people that I can't get to take care of themselves. And I think if I could sit here longer, I'd probably be able to write down more names. So I wonder sometimes, I mean, I don't think it's as cut and dry as you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. Some people are going to fail and some people are going to thrive. There's people on this list who eventually listened. There are people on this list who listened and then didn't have the tenacity to make it through the treatment, I guess, if that makes sense, and then backed out. And I see a lot of people here. Actually, you used a golf reference, and I wrote someone's name down.
Oh.
Actually happened to them. They couldn't play golf anymore. And I thought, oh, they're going to take care of themselves now. But, instead what they did is they stopped playing golf.
Yeah.
And then I have the names of two people here who are just acting like it's not happening. And, and then, of course, I have my friend Mike who, would never listen to me,
Yeah.
And he would actually get angry if you tried to talk to him. And I wonder back now on whether or not that was his blood sugar sometimes,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So listen here. Someone says, listen, I couldn't come up with a question for Ask Scott and Jenny, but I want to say that I'd like to hear more about this too. I have type 1. But my partner has type 2 and won't do anything except take metformin. They won't test their blood sugar, won't ask for a CGM, and will not change anything about how they eat. It can be hard sometimes to see someone that you care about, not take steps that would help them. I think you should talk about this topic. People would benefit from it great. I don't know what we know to say about it. My brother was this way and now is suffering consequences. Now he's suddenly interested in being more healthy. But his kidneys are shot. If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information.
And sometimes it comes to that point during, your life with diabetes or many other health conditions too that truly need to be well taken care of via lifestyle or, I guess less cumbersome medications that don't really require more than just taking it, but lifestyle changes that go along with that medicine doing what it should for you. It really is. It's a personal thing. It's the reason that everybody can't just get along too. Right? like if we could really help to change somebody to the positive without making them feel like we are offering, what we expect are the solutions
right
to the problem. And sometimes I think as you take it from the side of the person who has the condition or diabetes, well, you're not living it. So sure, you can come up with all of these solutions for me, but I'm the one who has to apply them. And in doing that, it almost, like I said, it comes for some people down to a matter of what really matters and getting that as a kind of a hit point of, oh yeah, I guess I could feel better by doing this or adding this.
Yeah.
Sometimes, the example of somebody who's living with type 1 and has a significant other, with type 2, that's an interesting living dynamic because clearly I would expect that their partner with type 2 sees how they take care of themselves with type 1, right? They see the actions of the person they're living with and yet still are very resistant to making any changes for their own life. So that's an interesting dynamic to live with.
I met a young person recently who has type 1 who doesn't use a CGM, doesn't use a pump, and doesn't know what their A1C is, but is perfectly sure that they're doing well. How you doing? Oh, I'm doing terrific. And I was like, oh, that's great. What's your A1C? I don't know. You have a CGM? No. Do you get low often? Not that often. You know, I'm like, I mean, I don't know. You could be lucky, but if you're getting low and getting high and don't know what's happening, like it's
correct.
You know, until it's too late. That's the first time you're gonna. I mean, if you're not looking, you can't see it.
It's called denial.
Yeah. There's a word for it.
And that's the hard part of being the person seeing this happen and not wanting to say something that again is placing blame. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You want to be able to tell the person you're completely in denial. You have to face up to the fact that one, this isn't going away, and two, it would be better if we just hand in hand navigate this together. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to help you. What can I do for you? How can we do this together? If we're going to change our food structure or our activity structure or whatever it is, I'll do it with you. Yeah. I mean, these people are asking because they want to be a partner.
I mean, what this really boils down to, like you said, it's personality, but psychology. And you don't just make people do something that they're not going to do. The last thing that I read about this person's brother, at the end of her statement, I think it's a statement, by the way, it's from a woman. I think, by the way, it's written. It says, maybe showing him the consequences of people who didn't manage well. And she lists amputees, retinopathy, dialysis. Maybe that would help him. And all I can tell you after interviewing thousands of people is it helps some people and doesn't help other people. And it actually pushes some people away because it pushes them deeper into their denial. That's not going to happen to me. I always use the example of like people smoke. They know what smoking cigarettes does. Like we all know that's not good for you, but people are like, and my father was all that. He'd come home from the doctor. Doctor said, I'm good. I'm like, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm fine. And my dad dies of COPD or congestive heart failure. I don't even remember congestive something from smoking.
Right.
And like, you know, like, so like, and he's, you know, I'm good. Right. Until he wasn't. But your point about it being somebody that you care about, I think the irony is that if Jenny, if you had type 1 and weren't taking care of yourself and I loved you and I knew to talk to you about it and you were like, leave me alone, you could also look over at me and go, you have things you could fix in your life, buddy. And then like, you know what I mean? Like, what's that?
Right.
Cast the first stone thing. I don't know. I didn't read the Bible, but like, you know, like there's something in there, right?
Right. Yes.
We're caught in an age-old human conflict, right? Like, so this isn't just, I got diabetes and he doesn't want to take care of it. And I mentioned it to him 3 times and he didn't want to do it. So screw him. Like listen, I will say this, and I'm happy to use my brother's name. I don't know if I've ever said Brian's name on here or not before, but Brian has type 2 diabetes and I parented my brother, you know, but very kindly and not in a way that he would feel parented. And he knew what was happening, but I was never like insulting about it. He and I don't live anywhere near each other. Actually, he could probably walk to Jenny's house, but you know, it would take me 15 hours to drive to him.
It would take him a couple of hours to drive here.
Oh, would he? I don't know that whole place.
Yes.
Anyway, he had type 2 and he was carrying weight. And I'd say, hey, Brian, what are you doing? You know, how's it going? My A1C is in the 7s. I'm like, oh, what are you going to do for that? Doctor wants me to. Are you going to? I think you should. You should try. Let me know if I can help you. And I'm going to tell you, years. It took me years. And finally, I have to be honest, I think what really got him is I stuck a CGM on him when I saw him one time. And then he was like, oh, hell. And I was like, right. He goes, so I eat this and my blood sugar goes right up. And I was like, yeah. He goes, I didn't realize that. And I was okay. So then he started to do it again. And I thought, oh, this is it. And he dieted a little bit. And then it went backwards again. And he went back and forth and back and forth. So then I said, hey, Brian, I think you should talk to your doctor about a GLP. You think so? Yeah, it took me a year to get him to do that. You know, but now Brian's A1C is in the 5s and he wears a CGM and I think he's going to be okay. And he lost weight and like everything, you know, but I never once beat him over the head with a stick about it. It was always just, I care about you. I hope you do something about this. I didn't try to scare him and he picked it up eventually. I also think that very possibly could have not worked, you know?
Correct. And I think what you said there is like, you didn't try to scare them, and the scare tactics never work. I mean, that's something that age old, a lot of practitioners do, I think, without thinking about it. I don't think their goal is to scare, but I think their idea is, well, if, as the person stated, well, if they just show them the complications, or if you talk to them about these and make it very forceful in explanation, if this is going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
some people may take it upon themselves and go, you're right, I have to do something. That's a person that's very willing and probably already in the stages of like contemplating a change.
Yeah.
Willingness to accept some information. But the other type of person is going to say, well, it's going to happen anyway, I guess. So why should I care?
Yeah.
I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Because essentially they're missing the point of action now means prevention. They're completely just skipping over to, well, you're telling me about all these things that are coming. Well, crap, I'm just going to enjoy doing what I'm doing the way that I do it right now. And I'll get these anyway. So what does it matter?
I used to hate ordering my daughter's diabetes supplies. I never had a good experience, and it was frustrating. But it hasn't been that way for a while, actually for about 3 years now, because that's how long we've been using US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. They have served over 1 million people with diabetes since 1996, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. Find out why US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau at usmed.com/juicebox, or just call them at 888-721-1514. Get started right now, and you'll be getting your supplies the same way we do. How many times have you thought, it's time to change my CGM? I just changed it. And then you look and realize, my God, it's been 14 days already, a week and a half. Feels like I just did this. Well, you'll never feel like that with the Eversense CGM, because Eversense is the only long-term CGM with 6 months of real-time glucose readings, giving you more convenience, confidence, and flexibility. So if you're one of those people who has that thought that I just did this, didn't I? Why do I have to do this again right now? If you don't like that feeling, give Eversense a try, because with Eversense, you'll replace the sensor just once every 6 months via a simple in-office visit. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox to learn more and get started today. Would you like to take a break to take a shower? You can with Eversense without wasting a sensor. Don't want anybody to know for your big day? Take it off. No one has to know. Have your sensors been failing before 10 or 14 days? That won't happen with Eversense. Have you ever had a sensor get torn off while you're pulling off your shirt? That won't happen with Eversense. So no sensor to get knocked off. It's as discreet as you want it to be. It's incredibly accurate, and you only have to change it once every 6 months. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. I've seen people treat health just like it's money or social status too. Like generations, we've been broke for generations. I'm not getting out of this. You know what I mean? So I'll just take my crappy job and I'll do my thing and that'll be it. I can't get out of this house. I can't do that. Like, look around me. This happened to my brother. It's my mother. You don't think it consciously, but you look around, you think this is my lot in life. Like, this is what's going to happen, And if everybody's got diabetes, then, it's colloquial. Like we got the sugars, my family's got the sugars. It's going to get us. And I'm like, oh, geez, that's not right. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so anyway, all right. Well, good conversation.
It makes me sad that we don't have an answer. I so want to have an answer. I so want to be able to say, hey, just do this for the person that you're trying to support and it'll get them to turn around. But unfortunately, that's just it's not human nature. And I wish there was an answer. You have to not give up. If you really want to help the person, I think you have to not give up, and you have to assess who they are. Like, what keeps you in their life to keep saying, hey, check it out. And by the way, in this one statement here,
you can read where people get frustrated. My brother was, we heard this already, but my brother was this way and now is suffering consequences. Suddenly interested in being more healthy. There's sarcasm in suddenly. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, suddenly they're interested. Like, yeah, well, my dad stopped smoking when he got heart failure too. You know, like until then, denial and hope mixed together is pretty strong. I won't.
Right.
It's probably not going to happen to me. And especially with diabetes, where it's not happening. Smoking is the same way. It's not happening right now while you're doing it. It's not like falling. You know what I mean? You don't go, oh, I'm bleeding. I'll try not to fall again. It's very simple.
And I think there's a difference here too. I don't know. I mean, the grand majority of your listeners definitely have type 1 diabetes, right?
Yeah.
But in all of this, nobody sort of blatantly said type 1. Right. And so what we may be able to also understand is that with type 2 and with some of the meds that are not as directly impactful on blood sugar, like insulin, right? You take it, you can see what it does this way, whatever. Whereas with type 2 diabetes and some of the oral medications and the other kinds of things, sometimes it makes it a little bit harder to make a change because along with lifestyle, those medications, they sort of require a partnership. And then you start to see results.
Yeah.
They may not be as immediate. And so somebody who's trying to make a change, maybe making it and may not have the right medications to help with what they're doing. So they're not seeing any results and they're thinking, well, what's the purpose?
It's like taking a vitamin or exercise. You know,
right.
I did a sit up. Where are my abs? Right. Like, you know, I took this vitamin D for a week. I don't feel any different. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to try a little longer than that. Like, it's, you know, but I agree. Like, it's a tough scenario to be put into because if somebody hasn't already made you believe that even though you're not seeing it, it's incredibly important, then you're the person I met earlier who's like, oh, I don't have a CGM. I don't know what my blood sugars are, but I'm good. Like, you actually don't know if you're good or not. You're living like it's 1980 and you have type 1 diabetes. And I don't think it matters, by the way, if it's a type 2 or type 1. I actually think we could have this conversation, take out all those words, and you could insert the one that's impacting you. It could be diet, exercise, diabetes. You know, it's all the same conversation, really.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, let's go to something a little more easy, a little easier.
Light.
Well, I don't know how light this one is. What do you do if your doctor won't prescribe a certain medication that you need, or if your insurance won't cover it? Oh God, jeez.
Well, I think the doctor side is potentially a little bit easier. I don't love using the word easy in many places, but I think that is if you're in an area where you have multiple practitioners to pick from, and allowance on your plan involves a bigger network of people or, you know, doctors to choose. Absolutely, you could switch doctors, right? Because if you need a medication that someone is not willing to prescribe and you've brought in enough information to support your reason for believing this medication could be to your benefit, and the doctor is still not willing to discuss, right? I mean, working with any healthcare practitioner, it's a partnership. You both should be putting something into this effort at your health.
Yeah.
It's not one-sided. And so if the doctor's not helping, then find somebody who will, right? The other side of it is it's a little bit harder, honestly. I mean, insurance coverage varies based on the plan that you have, the type of coverage you have for prescription versus durable medical equipment types of product. Sometimes it can be gotten around with insurance coverage where the doctor writes a letter of medical necessity stating reason as to this product versus that, this medication versus that. I mean, I myself, with using a pump for years and years, one type of rapid acting insulin, I can use it as an injection, but if I take it and infuse it with a pump, I get a really hard knot under my skin.
Oh, wow.
And so I can't use that particular rapid insulin. And so my doctor has written over the years when I've had a preferred for that type of medication or that type of insulin, my doctor's written a letter that says, but this, and this happens. My patient needs to have this alternative rapid insulin. Yeah. And so I pay a little bit out of pocket, but it's nothing comparative, right, to what would happen.
So many little things you don't realize until stuff like that. Like Arden's using a GLP through a pen right now, and she said that the needles that come with the pen hurt, but the BD, like the there's another type of a needle she can get. She goes, doesn't hurt as much. And I'm like, oh, cool. Or, she shoots Fiasp. We tried Fiasp in a pump, and she would get like what she would call, it felt like bruising. So I don't know why. I mean, I feel like it might be the additive that speeds it up. I don't know. What do they use? Like vitamin B or something like that? I forget. Listen, I'm not a doctor for sure. But Fiasp makes her site feel bruised. She could tough through it if she wanted to, but she's like, it hurts.
Huh.
Whereas Lumjev, because we tried everything, that she can, maybe the pump's on for an hour and she's like, this has to come off right now. Like it burns and she can't take it. Novolog works okay for her, but not great. So we use Apidra. Apidra works terrific. It's in her notes. Like we had a doctor like note her account like that, her chart. I will say this is going to sound a little cynical, perhaps. You can find a doctor to help you. You just they're
absolutely.
Yeah. They're not all like, what do I want to say? Like, hey, just, I think this will help. And some doctors, if they don't think it's going to hurt you, will go, sure, let's try it. And, and that's not a bad thing. There's also I don't think you should push your doctor around, because there's a high chance you're wrong too. But with the things about, like this insulin's better for me, that kind of stuff. But, Jenny, we're going to live through this GLP not being covered thing for type 1s for probably another year or two. I would imagine, even though the studies are happening now, and we're seeing it already. Like you're seeing, you work with people who are paying out of pocket for it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. People who are paying out of pocket, people who are actually paying out of pocket, but going to Canadian pharmacy because it's less expensive and less cumbersome to actually get it.
Yep.
So
I had to do that for Arden. So, Arden just got an Ozempic pen that was, oh my God, you should see how it works. You call a company that's based in Canada that I'm pretty sure, I'm not talking to a Canadian. Then the pen comes from, maybe from Taiwan,
somewhere,
China, Taiwan, like something like that. Like it's on this long pen, like it's crazy. Like it's absolutely crazy, but she doesn't use very much of it. So out of pocket, it's not cumbersome for us. If I had to buy that pen every few weeks, like I couldn't afford to do that, and her doctor wants her to have it. And it doesn't matter. The insurance company's like, right now they're hiding behind it's only approved for type 2s.
Right.
Yeah. But then I have my weight works, so I can have Zepbound, no problem. I literally don't pay a penny for that.
Right.
Yeah. But I can't I can't give it to Arden. It's measured wrong. And it's a disaster. So change doctors till you find somebody. The little bit I'd like to add on to that is don't just pick another doctor out of the yellow pages.
Correct.
Call ahead, have a conversation with the office manager, make sure you're not wasting your time by going, you don't want to switch to a place that's not going to help you either.
And if they're not, some of the medications or even some of the things like CGMs, sometimes if you have a really good primary care doctor who you've had a really good relationship for a while already, some of those could be written by primary care if they're willing, right? So that's another source of sort of securing a prescription for something. Now, some of the, let's call them fancier meds that are very specific to diabetes, your primary care is very likely not going to do that for you. But again, just as a potential option, some will.
I'll say too, if you can afford it, a concierge doctor is a good way to go.
There you go.
For those of you who think, I'm not paying a doctor cash, that must be crazy. I use a concierge doctor, but our insurance covers it. So we see her, we pay out of pocket. She sends us a bill. I submit the bill. I get almost all the money back. They just, for some reason, won't cover it the first time. I don't even care why.
Sometimes those are relative to how it's written. Sometimes I know that insurance will be very willing to reimburse if you can provide the fact that your in-network providers will not provide the same type of service or the same type of education or care. If that's not available in one of their in-network providers, many times they will reimburse.
Yeah.
So
eventually that's going to change too, by the way, because I hate to say this, but like doctors are doing this more and more.
Yes.
Like it used to be like, we'll all get together in a group and we'll pool together. And now they're all running from that. So you're going to see a lot more of this concierge stuff. But the other problem here is we're talking basically about this issue from our perspective.
Correct.
Plenty of you are going to have crap insurance, and it's not going to matter what you do or who you beg. They're just going to stonewall you the whole way.
Right. And I won't even get into Medicare because that's a whole nother box of worms to open up, quite honestly, in terms of what they cover, how they cover it, how things are written, when lab tests are done and going over a certain time. There's so many rules and regulations within Medicare. It's astounding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's go. Maybe the next one's going to be upbeat. When it's not.
No. Where did you pick these? Because they're all in a row.
They're just asking us questions. When you've been focusing 24/7 on diabetes management for a long time, and then things start to settle in, how do you get yourself out of feeling like you still need to focus on it 24/7? I have, okay, this is a parent. I have blood sugars readily visible in every room of my house. Should I turn some of those screens off? Yeah, I think you definitely should. Yeah. Well, am I destined to forever be watching this? I say, if you put it on every screen in the house, you are destined to be watching it forever. But look, I sit in front of 2 computers all day. And on one of them, up in the corner, there's a little number from Sugar Pixel that tells me what Arden's blood sugar is. I don't think I ever look at it.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, when I need to know what her blood sugar is, I frequently forget it's there. I do have the glucose globe.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
I have one in here because I'm working and all my alarms are shut off. And so if Arden has a flashing red problem, I won't know because I'm recording. And I have one in my bedroom because when I wake up at night, it's easy to just look and go, oh, it's green. I'm okay. She's fine. And I don't think about it again. I think it's a really terrific tool. Now, if I had one in my hallway so I wouldn't miss it if I was going from my bedroom to my office, then I'd be worried about myself. Yeah. And I see people do this all the time. There's always some ingenious engineer dad who turns the wall clock into a CGM or something. It's really cool, but
I think it boils down to how much data do you need, right? I guess I look at it from, are you in a time of trying to figure things out? Are you making a lot of adjustments? Are you trying to watch so that you can see whether the changes you made have made a difference? Or are you in a time where, as this person states, things have been pretty good and I just can't step away?
Yeah.
You have to consciously then step away.
Right.
Turn off half of the rooms with the Sugar Pixel or whatever you've got glowing, right? Turn half of them off, right? Because they're not needed at this point. When something shifts and changes, and again, you're trying to put in adjustments and make sure that they're working, great. Be a little bit more vigilant.
It's the difference between you're trying to assuage your fear and you're trying to help yourself make a good decision. I think you're right. When you're first learning something or dialing something in, you do have to be a little hyper aware of it because you're making those kinds of decisions. I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast or not, but my kids got me that chameleon behind me for Christmas. And for the first 4 weeks, I was staring at the thing, waiting for it to are you going
to poop? Can you eat the worm?
Oh
eat the worm.
Did he eat the thing? He ate the thing. Or she, right? And then but no kidding. Listen, this is neither here nor there. But the way you can tell if that poor thing is hydrated correctly is when it goes to the bathroom, you have to assess 2 different things that happen. And once you have those things right, then she's healthy. But that stuff comes from humidity and misting and how long you do it and what time of day you do it. And you're like, oh my God, so I'm turning knobs on humidity at 2 a.m. to see if the shit comes right out on Thursday. And so for a while, I was staring at the thing a lot. But then I figured it out and I don't do that anymore. I check in once in a while now,
Right. I mean, and as far as you said, you've got your little Sugar Pixel notification. It's when something is around enough that you really don't pay much attention to it.
Yeah.
Unless it's blaring a noise or an alarm or something at you to pay attention to. People ask me, well, how often do you look at your blood sugars and where are your alarms set and whatever? And I have my stuff turned off.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm working with people, unless I get an alarm for something, my phone is off. All of that it's turned off. I used to, when I first got my glucose, which I also love, I think it's a fabulous little tool.
Really
I'd carry it around because I thought it was kind of fun to have it in different areas and be able to see rather than even open up my phone or look at my watch to see where my number was. And now it lives in our bedroom on my bedside table. Because like you said, it's a nice way that if I wake up, I can easily glance, I see a color and I'm like, great. I don't even have to open up my phone to look at or whatever, right?
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
You come to feel a confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And again, unless you need to adjust something, you're really trying to pay attention to a time of day. And maybe open everything up for a time of day that you're having problems with, but don't open it up 24/7.
Yeah, you can't always be looking and staring at it like that. Like, you know what the feeling is. It's like, my kid's about to die. I got to make sure that doesn't happen. Here's my best advice on this. And I'll stand behind this like 100%. If you're just diagnosed, listen to the Bold Beginning series. Once you understand that, maybe at the same time, listen to Defining Diabetes so that you have all the terms down, you understand the words. Once you've understood all that and you're ready to move on, listen to the pro tips. And then about 6 months from now, you're going to be good at this. And then set your alarms where you know you want to catch them.
Right.
Arden's low alarm is at 70 because I know from her settings, if we make it to 70 and it's falling, she maybe is going to keep going. Like that's just what I know from, history. And then I like my phone to beep at 120 and I like hers to beep at 130 going up. And that honestly is getting less and less important as the algorithms get better and better. But my rule of thumb is if that thing doesn't beep, don't look at it.
Right.
After you know that you're making good decisions where you're not vacillating up and down wildly. Now, if I don't know, what's a good example? I just told you about it. Arden missed her GLP I told you about before we started.
Yes.
Arden's finals came up. She missed her GLP for like 3 days. She just didn't shoot it. Of course, now the settings she has are not heavy enough because without the GLP, her insulin needs go up. So her insulin needs are going up, but Arden's using IAPS. So IAPS is getting more aggressive as it's happening. Then she shoots the GL. So there I'm fine. I let her go because she's finals. Like she was seeing 180s and 200s, but it was after meals and they were coming back and she wasn't getting low. So I'm like, let me just let her get through her finals. I don't want to I'm not going to bother her right now.
Bombard her. Yes.
Yeah. But as soon as she shot that GLP again, almost as soon as, now suddenly the algorithm's being aggressive. Omnipod 5 people are going to know this too, right? Like if you're super active for days and then suddenly you're sedentary, you might,
yes.
Yeah, you might see a shift in how your settings are less valuable after you had a big change. And so she shoots it again. And now I pay closer attention to it because now it's not a 180 blood sugar for an hour. Now it's a 55 if something gets sideways, right?
Right.
And so then I paid more attention to it. I actually looked at it and I was like, I was with her, which I hadn't been for a while. I was like, I'm going to turn a couple screws here in this algorithm. You mind if I move things around a little bit? And changed her. By the way, her insulin sensitivity is now like 1 moves her 90 from 1 moves her 43 where she started before GLPs. And I made a couple of adjustments. I watched it for a day and a half and I was like, all right, this is good. And then I stopped looking at it again. So, I think that's what and if you can't do that, I talked to a therapist, not, I wouldn't ask me, because it sounds like you might have gotten yourself into a bad pattern maybe.
I think technology adds a bit to it as well, because technology allows us all of this information and makes you then think, well, goodness, if it's giving me information every 5 minutes, I really need to pay attention. Every 5 minutes, it could absolutely change. It could, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to react to it. I think technology has brought in a world of benefit, but it's also brought in a lot more reaction versus sit back, watch, make an adjustment, and watch again. The reactive nature of managing any slight blip up or any slight blip down ends up creating a lot more roller coaster, when truly with a lot of the algorithms that we now have, the algorithm needs time to accommodate for any slight rise or slight fall. You have to let it work. And again, you have to work with it.
Yeah, because the algorithm's working on its own timeline and your timeline's not the same as it. So if you step in, you are most certainly going to mess it up in the future, unless your settings are so bad that it needs intervention. And that's the thing you need to know, not just guess about, because, otherwise, and you can use it. And like Arden got low overnight last night. And what do I mean by low? She went to 65. So she hit 65, so I get an alarm because it went pretty quickly from like 75 to 65. I got an alarm. I woke up. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I wonder if she'll hear this. And then I was like, I don't want to wake her up if she's going to, like, I don't want to call if she's already taken care of it, right? There's a lot that goes on into this all of a sudden. There's a dynamic here. It's tough, you know? If she's already done something about it, I don't want to wake her up. I don't want her not to wake up if it's a problem and it's still falling. So I looked at, I know this is a little unfair, but I have Night Scout because Arden is using IAPS. And I looked back and this thing did not think she was going to get low. It had not been cutting basal. Like she was coasting really well, but also hadn't bolused or made any like pushes with her basal. And then I looked at insulin on board and I'm like, she shouldn't be low here. I wonder if she's laying on this thing. Maybe this is a compression low, right? Like maybe, let me wait a minute. And
but
so,
especially since you said it changed pretty quickly between 75 and 65.
Yeah, but it had happened. So I woke up so quickly that I couldn't look back and because you can see a compression low after they happen, but as they're happening, you can't 100% be sure.
Right.
And so I'm watching it and then it did this thing that I know means she's laying on her sensor. So it was 65 stable. Then all of a sudden it was 59 and it was diagonal down. But then on the next time it said 62 diagonal down. And I went, oh, it's trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain to you that I know that that's what that means, but I just know because I've seen it a couple of times.
It's enough watching of data.
Yeah, that's all. I watched one YouTube video about chameleons and then I went back to sleep. So I'm still trying to learn things about chameleons. Jenny, let me just tell you why right now. And then we'll do one more question. Oh, God. This is not part of Ask Scott and Jenny, but my kids get me this.
Fun information.
My kids get me this. I love this chameleon. It's fantastic. I've wanted a chameleon my entire life. I'm sure I'll talk about it on the podcast at some point.
My boys love the slow-mo videos that you text to me.
I send Jenny's boys slow-mo videos of it eating, and it's a lot of fun. But I like how slowly they move and how specific they are. I like that they're difficult to take care of. And if I'm being honest, I miss taking care of my kids a little bit. So so this is a nice thing for me to put that caregiver energy into. I mean, I put most of it into you guys, but
it's a hairless child.
So were the kids when they were born. Oh my God. So a couple days before Christmas, we were standing around talking about things that we wished we had done or want to do in our life. And I went around the room. I had the kids say something, my wife, I put some friends over. And then they asked me, and I very quickly blurted out, I want to keep a chameleon as a pet. And everyone looked at me like I had 7 heads because I'm 52, in my life mentioned this to anyone, right? It's just the way I felt since I was a kid.
Aw.
My family, lovely, they go out and get me a chameleon, but that's not.
It also means up to that point, they hadn't gotten you a Christmas gift.
Yeah, they were like, oh, finally, just something for this jackass because I didn't know what to get him. But so, yeah, by the way, I'm the dad. I get like T-shirts and like a thing. My wife got me a squatty potty for Christmas one time. I was so fucking mad. And can I tell you something? I love that thing.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I held it and I was like, this is a Christmas gift? She goes, you're going to love it. I'm like, I don't care. Don't give me this for Christmas. And like, anyway, it's one of the best Christmas presents I've ever gotten in my life. This is neither here nor there. So anyway, the thing is, there's a lot of different kinds of chameleons. And if I'm being honest, this is not the one I would have chosen. But it's fantastic and I love it. And honestly, it's a good starter because it's a little more forgiving with its health and stuff like that. But there is this kind that I want. They're expensive and they're very, very rare and they're hard to find. And so what I thought was, I'm going to take care of this one. This one will live 6-7 years if I do a really good job with it. I'll really understand this then. And then I'm going to get the next one. I started to get worried because I'm 52. And 6 years from now, I'll be 58. And the one I want could live 12 years. And I started going, 60. Do I want to be taking care of a chameleon when I'm 70 years old? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like maybe and maybe not. And so like, and
maybe you'll put it on pet carriers and put it under your seat when you travel on the airplane.
Can you imagine? And so so then I'm like, I tell people this is my, it helps me when I get nervous. What do they call that? I don't know.
Your like little lifelines.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like some people have ponies. I'd have a chameleon. Anyway, so I look into it and I find that there are really only about 3 people breeding these chameleons anymore. The one that I really want, right? And I go, okay, I identify who they are. I actually make a little note in my computer and I to myself, like 4 years from now, go check into this. But as I'm looking into it, the guy who like breeds them the best is like, I'm not doing this anymore after these. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me. And I was like, I've been doing this for 20 years, but this is the last clutch I'll ever do. I'm like, can you wait a minute? I just figured this out, you know? And so anyway, I bought another one.
So now you're going to have 2 big.
Yeah, he's on his way. He'll be here in like a week and a half. So.
How do they come, given that, I mean, you've explained enough to me, like the humidity and all of that kind of stuff. How do they
Overnight
come?
mail. He'll put it into a box, packaged a certain way with, like, I guess just moist towels to keep enough humidity in there. And he goes to the post office at the end of the day, and it will be across the country I'm buying it from California. I'm in New Jersey. It will be at my post office at 10 a.m. the next day. So you pay a really hefty, like, amount of money to get it moved quickly. And the guy told me, he goes, you'll open it up and it'll just be like, hey, what's up? And it's crazy. He's like, how well they ship like that. So anyway, I have another chameleon coming. So at some point, this tank behind me will actually be slid over so that the other one could fit behind me. And then I'm going to feel ridiculous. But it really is, it's the only thing that I was like, I don't want other pets. Our dogs are older. Like, this is going to be good. Plus,
at some point, I will only be worried about you if I sign in at some point and you are surrounded by jungle leaves and I can no longer see you. Then I'll be a little bit worried.
The breeder says to me, I got a nice female too. And I went, are you upselling me? And I was like, no, that's okay. Oh, you want to hear something crazy? The breeder, this chameleon, I was speaking to him on the phone to set the whole thing up. And as he was talking, he was so knowledgeable about this thing that just is not, it's not information that's out in the world, really. Like these certain kinds of breeders for this certain, they're very private. They don't share their information really well. And he's like, I'm so, he kind of said like, I'm going to stop doing this now. I'm worried that, what's going to happen to the population of these things. And I said, you ought to make a podcast and just dump all your knowledge into it about breeding them and put it out in the world. And maybe somebody will pick it up and figure it out. And he goes, a podcast. And I was like, yeah, you should. Like, I said, I make a podcast and basically I do the same thing. I have a bunch of information that a lot of people don't have. And I let it out through conversation. I said, hell, man, I'll host it for you. I'll interview you and, you can get all your stuff out and put it up online. And I don't know that he's interested or not, but he says to me, what's your podcast about? And I said, type 1 diabetes. And you know what he said? My daughter has type 1 diabetes. And I was like, oh my God, how old is she? And he's like 20. And I was like, oh, my daughter's 20. She has type 1 diabetes. It was the weirdest thing.
That is weird. That's the universe.
I don't know what it is.
You cannot, I don't know. I always feel like you can't believe that we're just randomly like sputtering around the universe,
but
right?
Isn't it odd that there's a handful of people like dishing out good diabetes advice in the world, and there's a handful of people talking about this specific chameleon, and like both of our kids have diabetes and we're talking to each other. And then he, by the way, texted me later and he goes, hey, my daughter says she's heard your podcast. And I was like, well, then I thought, of course, but no.
Right.
Who hasn't, Jenny? That's not the point. I mean, that was obvious, right?
And you're like, well, you give me an extra chameleon for free?
Can I get a discount? He said no. So I even asked, I was like, what about cash? Is there a cash price? He goes, cash is the same as everything else. I was like, oh, okay. But I understand. It's, Jenny, a 2-year process. I think by the time he sells them, I don't even know that he makes any money on it. Like it's, it's a labor of love. Like he's doing it to help people. It's really kind of nice. Anyway, we're low on time. So let me tell you this.
Yeah.
I, of course, didn't know anything about you. This is going to be about diabetes, I promise. I didn't know anything about chameleons when I started. And it was a bad idea to get one and not know. I just want to caution people. These are not impulse buy items. I had to put an insane amount of time and a fair amount of money into doing this correctly. So don't just jump into it. But once I was in, because my kids were like, surprise. And I was like, oh God. Like once I was in, I had to figure it out quickly. Right. And it was not dissimilar to being diagnosed with diabetes and not getting any information. And that hit me right away. I'm like, oh my God, this is what people do when they find my podcast. So my first thought was, my Facebook group is so helpful to people. I'll go find Facebook groups about chameleons. Well, that was less than helpful because they were a little judgmental is a word I'll use. And then I thought, that's why people like my Facebook group, because we're not in there on each other and being judgy and everything like that. I'm like, that's interesting. And then I watched how they talk. And then I finally found a guy with a podcast who had really good information and was good at expressing it. And that's where I started getting my chameleon information from. And then I started hearing him talk about community. And I was like, oh my God, he's having the same conversation about people helping people that I'm having.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying a little bit. It's exactly the same. And then I'm like, people are the same no matter what situation you put them in. There's going to be a couple nice ones. There's going to be a couple assholes. It's all going to be the same every time. Fascinating.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. Is he the one that told you had to look under the chameleon's leg and look for bumps and horns and whatever to determine whether it was a she or a he?
So Jenny, on the back of their back legs, I have a veiled chameleon right now. A little bump on the back leg means, I think it's called a tarsal, maybe, is a male. Without the bump is a female. Also, they have that kind of cast on their head. The ones that kind of stick up and are larger are generally males. But when they're younger, it's really hard to tell. Mm-hmm. And there's no bits and pieces to look for. You know what I mean? So.
Is her name still Princess?
I've been calling her Big Mama.
Oh, Big Mama.
Yes. Oh. My wife is pushing me very hard to name her after the character from the movie Sing. I'm concerned that my wife is 50 years old and really loves that animated movie where the animals are singing. But nevertheless, she wants me to call her Miss Crawley, which I won't be doing. But she calls her that. My son's girlfriend calls her one thing. My son's girlfriend calls her something. Kelly calls her something. I call her something. My brother's wife calls her Kanye. The thing's got like 75 names. So I got to be honest with you, it's a chameleon. I don't think it needs a name.
Actually, my husband and I had this conversation one day. We were sitting just, pets are what they are, right? And we were talking just about how creatures, we inherently know that we're human, right? Because we have the intelligence level and the understanding at a certain degree. Whereas we're looking at our dog, who just is, he's the greatest chocolate lab, right? And Nathan was like, does he know he's a dog? And I was like, no. He has no idea. He knows what he is from an evolutionary, all the things he's supposed to sniff and whatever, but he has no clue that dog means him.
Yeah. No, please. We made that word up, first of all. Yeah, we're all frontal lobe and thumbs, or we're probably in that dog situation pretty much. But yeah, no, it's not like if I was like, hey, Big Mama, the thing would turn and look at me. It does the same thing every time I get close to it. It goes, is this thing going to kill me? And then it goes, I don't think it's going to kill me. And then she calms down a little bit. Her life is she's programmed to avoid being captured by birds and snakes. And eat.
Does she react differently, though, in a learned way to you versus your wife?
No, she's now good with people, but not fast movements. You can reach into the tank slowly, but you have to come from under her. And there's a meter, this little box that you need to test the light with to make sure to make sure she's getting enough ultraviolet B. Jesus, you have no idea. And so and so if you reach in there with that meter, she gets defensive. She puffs herself up, turns her head a little, opens her mouth, makes a noise. She'll be like that kind of thing. If I reached in the same exact way without the thing in my hand, she'd be okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. This type of chameleon they're very difficult to hold. They probably won't even ever, she'll probably never be on my hand ever. So the other one that I got, will probably be more handled.
Docile, kind of.
They're very, very, very slow. It's incredible. I love them. They just look like dinosaurs. So
yeah, I think my favorite thing is their eyes.
Yeah.
I love the way that their eyes move. It's so cool, super cool.
If you approach her from the back, her eyes turn completely around and look backwards at you. All I want to know is, what does that look like to her? I would love a video of that. I know you can't do that, but I would love that. All right. Well, she's a lot bigger now than the last video I sent you. So I'll get you one today and send one over for the boys.
Awesome. Cool.
Thanks for doing this with me. Actually, the chameleon thing, I didn't just talk about my chameleon because I wanted to. I really wanted to say, I've just been having this overwhelming experience watching a chameleon community work the same way as the diabetes community does. And I've seen good examples of it work well, and I've seen good examples of it work poorly, and I've seen the exact same thing in diabetes. It really is. You can find somebody that can be valuable to you that won't be judging you. You just have to look around for it a little bit.
Right.
So anyway,
Agreed.
All right. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you. I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast and invite you to go to eversensecgm.com/juicebox to learn more about this terrific device. You can head over now and just absorb everything that the website has to offer, and that way you'll know if Eversense feels right for you. eversensecgm.com/juicebox. A huge thanks to US Med for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Don't forget, usmed.com/juicebox. This is where we get our diabetes supplies from. You can as well. Use the link or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or call the number, get your free benefits check so that you can start getting your diabetes supplies the way we do from US Med. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. You have questions? Scott and Jenny have answers. There are now 19 Ask Scott and Jenny episodes. That's where Jenny Smith and I answer questions from the audience. If you'd like to see a list of them, go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up into the menu, and click on Ask Scott and Jenny. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording, wrongwayrecording.com. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.